almost half of the Power 5 schools, those are the Power 5 schools that are playing, and those are the Power 5 schools that are not playing, are refusing, and I guess there's some HIPAA laws here, but they're refusing to disclose any COVID-19 data. They don't want us to know. They don't want the public to know. Maybe they don't want their administrators to know how many positive tests they're having amongst their student athletes. But that's concerning. When you get to the point where we can't publicly check, and I'm not talking about individuals because we don't want to violate any of these young adults' privacy laws, medical privacy laws. But when we get to the point where we can't check what's going on with college football's programs as it relates to the coronavirus, and this is 21 of the ACC, SEC, and Big 12 programs that are refusing to give COVID-19 data, then I think we have to start worrying about motivations and what these guys are actually trying to do. The value of a national championship, the value of an undefeated season, even if it is in a COVID world that we're living in a COVID college football season, the value of having success, regardless of the circumstances, is very high. The value is high. You win an ACC championship or an SEC championship or a national championship, a college football playoff championship. The value is enormous for your organization, for the individual head coaches who can stick it on their resume, and in 5 years we'll forget that it came in that COVID year. It's valuable to them. And we see coaches fighting to play because they know the value of winning and winning championships and winning national championships. But at the end of it, when I put all of this together, the fact that there are games happening right now, there have been games postponed that were supposed to be happening right now. You have basically half of the college football Power 5 not playing. The other half is dialed in, and I give them credit for getting it all worked out and not having any issues. You have new testing procedures come in. There's a question of whether or not you should delay the start of the season. You throw in the fact that half of the Power 5 conferences aren't reporting what their COVID data looks like at all. I ask myself, what is the point? What is the point? I understand that playing football is a great part of college sports. Fans love it. Thousands of fans, hundreds of thousands of fans go to college football games every weekend. They tailgate. They do all these amazing things that create a community, and alumni comes together, and college football, and when it's working right, is amazing. That's not what we're going to have. The University of Virginia just announced their schedule. The first part of their season, the only people allowed in the stands are family of the players and the coaching staff. Whether it's 50% capacity of the venue or 1,000, whichever is less, 1,000 people, that's what we're going to get. There's going to be no tailgating. There's going to be no alumni gatherings. There's going to be no campus energy that just rises and lifts up the school system and the community around the college football. That's not happening anywhere. They're going out to play games. They're going out to play games because they think that the players that they have want to play games, which I'm sure they do. But more importantly, they're going out to play games because winning matters. Winning is valuable. And even in a COVID season, they're winning without all the right principles in place. And that makes me ask, what's the point? You know that if there is one small outbreak, then maybe the whole team could be at danger. But these teams have pushed through it, and they have started. There were 2 games last night. UAB bested Central Arkansas 45-35. Southern Miss lost to Southern Alabama. These Alabama schools are getting it done. Southern Alabama beat Southern Miss, and there are 6 games tomorrow. And as I look at the season and as it's going to start playing itself out in college football, I don't know what to think. And yes, I'm happy that sports are back. I am. I'm happy that college football is back. There's nothing like the energy of the college sport. It's different than the professional sport. There's all this, alumni pride, and there's this energy that always follows the fact that you're doing it for the joy of the game, or more for the joy of the game and the scholarship than for the paycheck that you're trying to put into your pocket as it is on the professional level. There's just this purity to college football that you tend to gravitate towards as a sportsman. Now, we know what's going on. The Big Ten, the Pac-12, they have canceled their season, as have the West Coast Conference and the Mountain West. There's issues out in California because they're not allowing any sports until after the new year. But there's starting to be some movement for some of these conferences that have canceled sport. And this is a large picture that we're going to lay out. And I wonder if you guys will come to the same conclusion. So we know the conferences that have canceled. We know those that are going forward. The ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12, they are moving forward as planned, even though there have already, and this is just at the beginning, we haven't even gotten 2 or 3 weeks or a month into the season, started to figure out who's good and who's not. And 3 scheduled openers, already 3. This is in the very first week. There's only going to be 12 games or so, but in the very first week, 3 of the scheduled games have been delayed because of COVID-19 clusters. University of Louisiana Monroe, they delayed their game against Troy. NC State and East Carolina had to delay their games against Virginia Tech and Marshall, respectively. And so when you think about, this happening, yes, it's happening, but it's not happening seamlessly. Now, what that brings to the table was, well, what happens when one of these other schools has some sort of outbreak? Like Maryland is having right now. I know they're not playing, but Maryland just had to shut down all athletic programs because 46 student athletes tested positive. That's going to happen. And interestingly, the Big Ten and the Pac-12, this is what confounded them. Answering this question is why they ultimately decided to delay their seasons, delay the start of their fall seasons. They couldn't figure out what happens if we have 20 players test positive. How many guys are going to be available for us? Well, what about the downstream health issues with myocarditis, the enlargement of the heart because of some of these bigger players whose bodies are working harder to play the games of football? What happens to them in the long run? So the Pac-12 and the Big Ten said, we can't answer these questions clearly, we're going to delay. The other conferences, the other Power Fives, did not. And they're answering these questions, or at least trying to answer these questions in real time. Now, it's starting to get help because rapid testing has emerged. And the Big Ten just signed a deal to have rapid testing, which means they can test more frequently. If they find a guy or two who test positive, then they can remove them from the situation and prevent some sort of outbreak. But there's still a lot of questions. How many players do you need? Currently, there are about 80 or so players who are active in a college game. What happens if 20 of them go down? If you have only 40 available, are you still going to play the game? These are the things that need to be answered, not by the teams and the conferences that have canceled their seasons. This is by the conferences that are still playing. And again, they're lucky because they haven't had major outbreaks at Clemson or Florida State or any of the SEC schools. Georgia or Auburn actually did, and they had to delay practice for 6 days. So we're lucky. They're lucky so far. But what happens when this ultimately happens? And then the other thing that comes to fore is, well, what are we going to do about the records and the standings and the teams? What happens if, just like in baseball, you're not able to finish your whole season? You got to take 2 weeks off, and you only up playing 8 games as opposed to 12 games. Who is and say you're undefeated, who's the champion of the conference, or who's in the conference championship? More importantly, who gets to go to the college football playoff? Because right now, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the Pac-12 are debating whether or not to start their seasons in the late fall. So come late October or November, there's a good chance that we see the Big Ten and the Pac-12 starting their seasons. Are they eligible for the college football playoff? Or is it going to be like some of these other head coaches and those that probably have some incentive to not have the Big Ten and the Pac-12 in their conference? Go right ahead with it.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.